and welcome in to the Week 13 edition of Fantasy Football Rankings versus ECR. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. The handle's right there. And I've been doing this for the last 12 weeks now into Week 13, and I've had a lot of success. But for those who are unfamiliar, every year FantasyPros hosts a fantasy football rankings accuracy contest with over 200 of the industry's top writers and experts. The scoring's fierce. It requires experts to perfectly predict the order in which quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends will rank at the end of each NFL week. Check out the bottom of the Fantasy Data article that I wrote earlier today. It dropped at about noon, so you can check that out. I'm going to put the link for it in the chat. But in the meantime, you want to take a listen to the audio version of this article as well. Every week, there's new news that comes out, and so sometimes the rankings do have to change a little bit, but really not that much. I want to be bullish or bearish on particular players throughout the week, and that's what this podcast and episode is about, comparing the rankings versus the players I like or don't like compared to consensus. Last week, I finished 37th overall in accuracy in this contest with the top 24 finish. It says in tight end in the article, but it's actually at running back. And then I was number 10 overall in ranking for DST. I was not a repeat number one kicker ranker. Sorry, guys. But entering week 13, I moved up to 42nd overall in accuracy out of 211 rankers year to date. I'm looking to make a late season push to get into the top 10 for either positional or overall bid. And this is just a reminder to that I give advice to Fantasy Data's weekly rankings. They're an excellent resource for anyone looking to win their league, along with player projections and advanced metrics. And of course, I want to give some shout out to Fantasy Data as well, because this is where you get all of the data for making these decisions, these start sit decisions, the snap counts, the trends. Okay. And it's not just me, the 37th out of over 200 rankers in the industry. No. Not just me. Matthew Berry uses Fantasy Data. JJ Zacharyson uses Fantasy Data. That the fantasy footballers use Fantasy Data, and so should you. Use the promo code FFF20 for 20% off any Fantasy Data subscription. FFF20. Doesn't matter if it's a $5 subscription or a $500 subscription. Use this promo code FFF20. That's going to get you 20% off any Fantasy Data subscription. I use it to make my fantasy decisions, to help me. And it's not just for NFL, MLB, PGA, NBA, NCAA, all of it. They have optimizers, projections, article write-ups. Make sure that you're getting these premium articles. Use the promo code FFF20. It'll give you access to articles like the one that you can read my rankings for, but also some great usage articles. So use this promo code FFF20, get you 20% off. All right, we're going to continue on with this premium video and article. Follow me on this journey as I highlight a few players I want to be higher or lower on versus the consensus for week 13. The first player is Trevor Lawrence. And yes, it's the Detroit Lions. And not only do you play your fantasy quarterbacks when they face the Lions, but those players are also usually landing in the top 5 of point scorers, like except Aaron Rodgers, of course. Chasing a ceiling for Lawrence isn't a bad bet either, because he's finished 3 of his 11 weeks as a top 5 quarterback on the week and has finished his quarterback 8 or better in 4 of his last 6 contests. Lawrence is the quarterback 2 in NFL passer rating since week 9 and is only second behind Tua Tagovailoa, who had 7 passing touchdowns without an interception during that span. Lawrence has 6 with no interceptions. Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, the top 5 play at quarterback. He's the consensus 9. A player I'm lower ranked for this week is Dak Prescott, and this is moving him down a tier. Prescott has shown some struggles of late. Over his last 3 games, he's thrown 4 total interceptions, and that's more than every quarterback except 3. Aaron Rodgers, which is surprising that he's on the list, Josh Allen, and Davis Mills. And that's since week 10. Dak Prescott's PFF passer grade is his worst season grade since 2017. He's finished quarterback 17 or worse in half of his games, 3 of his 6 games. And the Colts, who he faces this week, week 13, they only allow 15.2 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks on the season. But they're the toughest matchup against wide receivers. So we can see maybe not a ceiling game from CeeDee Lamb, maybe a bust game from Michael Gallup, and really nothing else from a lot of the other wide receivers. They only allow 20.1 total fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And that's because Stephon Gilmore has only allowed 60 or more receiving yards once, and Isaiah Rodgers has only allowed 16 or more than 16 receiving yards once on the season. They are locked down corners, and the Colts may be without Kenny Moore this week, but it's still going to be a really tough matchup in that secondary. And that's why I think it's going to be an Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard game. Prescott will be at best my quarterback 10, and you have to change your view of him as he's facing the Indianapolis Colts. Even if this is a boom game for the Cowboys offense overall, Prescott is not one where I'm seeing this be a game script leading to an explosion game or a ceiling game. Now for a higher ranked running back, DeAndre Swift. And the hate for DeAndre Swift has just gone too far. And even though Swift fell short of the goal line twice on Thanksgiving against the Buffalo Bills, he still finished as the running back 35. Like, he still did something. He wasn't like the GIF where you see the stick figure taking a stick and poking the rock. Like, do something, right? No, DeAndre Swift was doing things despite not falling in the end zone. And what was encouraging for Swift was that he had improved usage. He played his highest snap percentage. He ran the most routes and earned the most targets of any game in the last 4 weeks. In fact, week 12 marked Swift's second most opportunities, that's targets and carries, on the season. And even though Swift fell on the wrong side of touchdown variance, his upside week to week is still massive, even if he's only playing at best 60% of snaps. And in fact, over the last 11 games, Swift has played 60% or more of the snaps just once. Just once. This game projects as a 50-point over-under game total, and I just can't help myself. I want to be in on players playing at Ford Field, Jacksonville Jaguars, Detroit Lions. And Swift is an integral part of this offense, whether it is between the 20s or even getting close to the goal line. All he needs is a 15-yard scamper, and we've seen plenty of those. So Swift is at worst my running back 20 this week. He's the consensus running back 30. It just, with the upside for Swift, that consensus doesn't make sense, right? You're banking on a bust game, I think. So, yeah, I can't be in on DeAndre Swift at running back 30. Lower ranked running back for this week, Alvin Kamara. And Alvin Kamara, we've lost all confidence with him, right? He's had single-digit fantasy points in 5 of 11 games, and he's finished running back 36 or worse 4 different times. There is a scary, scary floor for Alvin Kamara, and this week, this matchup does not make things any better. The Buccaneers may be mid-pack in allowing rushing fantasy points to running backs, but they're one of the league's toughest units for opposing pass-catching running backs. They give up the fewest receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. And you're thinking, well, okay, but like, how are the other teams doing? The difference between the Buccaneers, who are first, and the Detroit Lions, who are second, is the same difference between the Lions, who are second, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10th. only 2 games have a lower over-under than this Monday night game between the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's suggesting that there's not a lot of upside for Kamara to access. He's been limited in his touches. He's had less than 10 carries in 3 of the last 4 games. And it means he's probably going to be swimming in a desert of fantasy point sand come week 13. He's at best my running back 24. He's the consensus running back 14. I can't get behind. I just don't see a path of success for Alvin Kamara this week. I want to be out on him compared to consensus. Whereas I can't keep myself, like, I want to keep finding excuses to bump Garrett Wilson up the rankings. Like I originally had him at 15 and I was like, that's not high enough. I need to get higher on Garrett Wilson. Wilson ranks 6th in air yards after catch per reception, 16th in yards per route run, and 22nd in total fantasy points among wide receivers. He's 11th in red zone targets, 20th in target rate, and 23rd in receiving yards. Oh yeah, and like he's a rookie. But what's most exciting about this 10th overall pick back in the 2022 draft is that he's come into his own as of late. Wilson has finished as the wide receiver 15 or better in 3 of the last 4 games, and he's caught 19 passes for 302 yards on 24 targets. And he's played 83% of the snaps. He is a full-time wide receiver, averaging over 100 receiving yards during those 3 weeks. His week 13 matchup is very, very juicy. The Jets travel to Minnesota. It's in a dome. They're taking on the Vikings team and secondary that allows the most receiving yards to wide receivers on the season. Mike White is coming off a confident game. They're coming off a big win. It's in a dome. This is Garrett Wilson. Okay. Yeah. How high is too high? Like Elijah Moore is playing 30-40% of snaps. It's not like Elijah Moore is taking all of these snaps away. Corey Davis has been a shell of himself as of late, working back from the injury. Garrett Wilson, I want him to be as high as possible. He's at worst my wide receiver 13. I keep trying to make excuses to bump him up into the top 12. We will see if I can get there by Sunday. But for right now, wide receiver 13, his consensus is wide receiver 19. Deebo Samuel. Ooh, Deebo Samuel. The Christian McCaffrey existence in this 49ers offense, it's been so bad. It's been bad news for Samuel. I hypothesized this, though. I was asked on live stream, almost immediately, Christian McCaffrey is traded. What is the reaction? Well, my reaction is that they're going to share workload. They both rush the ball. They both catch passes close to the line of scrimmage, and they're both going to eat into each other's work and fantasy points. And that's exactly what's happened, right? In the 4 games Deebo and McCaffrey have been active, Deebo Samuel has finished as the wide receiver 45 or worse in 3 of those games. And he's combined 166 total yards in 4 games. That's on average 41 yards per game in those contests. You can't do it. Deebo may still rank wide receiver 10 in target rate, but his targets are so close to the line of scrimmage, and you're banking on the yards after catch, which he can break 1 or 2 of those. And we saw that against the Arizona Cardinals. But as long as McCaffrey is active, the floor is so dangerous for Deebo Samuel's fantasy value. And now Deebo is significantly questionable for this game. I wrote this article up before finding out about the Deebo Samuel questionable tag. So Samuel's going to rank outside my top 24 of wide receivers, and I'm going to keep dropping him lower. He might not even be active for this game, but even if he plays, you have to be very, very skeptical of the upside that Deebo Samuel carries going into week 13 with an active Christian McCaffrey. A tight end that I'm higher on versus consensus is Isaiah Likely, and it's because he's returned to practice. Even though Likely missed week 12, Josh Oliver proved that it's not just a one-time deal. The backup tight end to Mark Andrews is a valuable fantasy spot. And so, with Isaiah Likely projected to be the backup tight end returning from this injury, right? He's a start in desperate tight end leagues, right? He's not a top 12 play, but he can get in there for you. In Likely's absence, Josh Oliver finished as the tight end 2 overall, and he went 4 for 76 and a touchdown on 6 targets, which was second on the team in targets, only behind Andrews himself. Now, Isaiah Likely was coming off 2 straight 5 or more target games before leaving his week 11 game with an ankle injury. And yes, we're going to be monitoring snaps for Isaiah Likely, but it's clear that Likely is in line for a heavy role. And I think he's the tight end 15 going into this week. I want to be bullish on the second pass catching option in this Baltimore offense because we can't trust Demarcus Robinson. We can't trust Devin Duvernay. We can't trust James Proche or any other wide receiver. Deshaun Jackson, are you kidding me? Like, maybe it's Josh Oliver, but once we get more clarity, I want to be in on this second tight end as a tight end dart play. Yeah, and he's cheap. He's free. Nobody believes in Isaiah Likely. So it's Likely who's tight end 43, and then the consensus for Josh Oliver is also like tight end 38. So it's extremely low. Somebody's going to hit. Somebody is going to play well. And I think it's going to be Likely as he played ahead of Josh Oliver when they were healthy. The last player I want to talk about tonight, and this is a lower ranked tight end, is Greg Dulcich. Look, the Broncos spiral to the pit of fantasy despair. That doesn't help matters. But Greg Dulcich hasn't been much of a fantasy asset as of late. He's dead last among qualified tight ends in yards per route run and PFF receiving grade over the last 3 weeks. And during that span, 2 of Dulcich's 3 weeks, he's finished as tight end 34 or worse. He's still playing 86% of snaps and running 29 or more routes every game, but it's a bad offense and he's had bad production, and that compounds the limitation of Greg Dulcich's upside. I don't get it. Why is he tight end 13? Because we're hoping and praying maybe he can fall in the end zone. There's just not a lot of love. So Jerry Jeudy might be making his return this week. That might end Greg Dulcich. So we'll see. His only hope is that he gets into the end zone just like any other tight end. So he's bumped down to tight end 19 for me. And give me like Harrison Bryant over Greg Dulcich. Give me Robert Tonyan this week over Greg Dulcich. That's how I'm valuing Dulcich right now. He's the consensus 13. I can't get behind it. All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure if you liked some of this info and you want to get access to premium subscription articles like the one that I just shared with you, use the promo code FFF20 for 20% off any fantasy data subscription, whether it's $5, $500, or anywhere in between. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. And until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.